I was
Right.
going to
Good
the dog before I
degree.
found out
Out of
she knows
business.
Art Collin, and I was like,
But you
"You're
got to
supposed
major
to
in
learn
something
that."
else. He was thinking about that.
Yeah, right.
history.
Yeah, right.
I'm like, God, I think that'd be a great
Or
thing.
no. Falls, they're supposed to live a year and a half. 3 years.
Megan's ruled out
It
of
calls
county.
all of us eventually.
County. They're down in Indiana. And
It calls
all
all of
A's,
us.
don't know her.
one B's. I don't know. We're room together.
All right, let's do this.
He knows. Are you ready?
I am.
Oh, okay, good, good.
Laurel looks like she's praying, so I wasn't sure if how we were starting the day.
We'll have an invocation.
Neil.
Couldn't hurt.
All right, I'm going to call to order this joint meeting of the Committee of the Whole of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Hinsdale and the Village of Hinsdale Finance Commission. And Chris, do you want to take a roll call?
Trustee Harlow? Here. Trustee Fisher?
Here?
Trustee Burns?
Here.
Trustee Banky?
Here.
Acting Chairman Postuma?
Here?
Chairman Waldo?
Here.
Commissioner Elder?
Here.
And Commissioner Boomer?
Here.
Thank you.
Great. So the purpose of this meeting is to kind of get up to speed on financial reporting. I think over the last year, in the course of moving to the new ERP system, and then with former Finance Director Daryl Langlois' retirement, we kind of got off track with some of the financial reporting. Now we have our new Finance Director, Andrea Lamberg, who has just recently arrived from the city of Park Ridge. And she is going to take us through our village finances for the first half of 2021 and what has been a very interesting year as we're coming out of the pandemic, and then talk a little bit about financial reporting going forward. So I'll turn this over to Andrea.
There you go. Oop.
So based on feedback, I am keeping this very high level, and the concept is just to make sure that everyone has an idea of where we're at mid-year, to set the stage for what I'm sure will be more robust meetings in the future as we work on the upcoming capital improvement plan and the 2022 budget. So feel free to stop me as I go through each of the sections if you have any questions. But with that, I will, go through briefly the agenda. There are 4 main agenda items that we were going to go over today, being the general fund overview, which includes the capital improvement plan, the water and sewer fund overview, the master infrastructure plan overview, and then just a brief outline of what the finance annual cycle will be looking like now that we're on a new calendar year. And some of these materials may be familiar to some of you because they were used last month when we did the update to get the consent from the village board to move forward with the capital improvement projects. They have been updated as appropriate with updated amounts. So to start with the general fund overview, first we're just going to go over where the budget ended up for 2021. And when the 2021 budget was drafted, the assumption or the forecast showed that the beginning unassigned fund balance would be $5.7 million. Both the budgeted revenue and the budgeted expenditures would be around $20.3 million. So there would just be a small net income, and the ending unassigned fund balance would be, again, $5.72 million, up from $5.71 million at the beginning of the year. And that would have had us meeting our fund balance target of 25% of operating expenditures. So with 2020 being a very interesting year, there were a lot of measures taken to ensure that we were not exceeding what our revenues would be as they were impacted by COVID. With all of those measures that were taken in conjunction with staff and the village board, I'm happy to report the actual fund balance at the beginning of the year was $5.93 million. And that's up from what the original estimate was of $5.71 million. So we definitely exceeded that target fund balance of 25% for the fiscal year that just ended the fiscal year that ended December 31st, 2020. The current operating forecast has our revenue being up from budget at $21.2 million and our expenses being slightly under budget at $20.2 million. And if these forecast numbers do play out through the end of the year, our ending fund balance will be $6.9 million, up from $5.9 million. And I apologize, I think that your expenditures on your print had $17 million.
Yeah.
And I apologize, those excluded the transfer to the master infrastructure plan and to the capital plan, and I caught that right after they were printed. So that's,
So what's that number?
it's.
The 17 instead of the 17?
Instead of 17, it is $20,227,398.
And so, I'm sorry, and so the ending fund balance then is forecasted what?
$6,967,026.
Thank you.
And again, both of those beginning and ending fund balances are in excess of the 25% target of operating expenditures. So some high-level detail on what those figures are. General fund revenue is trending over budget. This is mainly attributed to sales tax and the state income tax, or what is also known as the local government distributive fund. The revenue figures for 2021 were budgeted conservatively because we didn't know what the full impact of COVID-19 would be. And with restrictions being lifted, we are seeing those revenues recovering very nicely. So that's why you're seeing that those revenues in particular are overperforming from what the budget was. They're underperforming, as would be expected. Anything related to parking, the revenues are down. The commuter lots and just general parking, including fines, there hasn't been as much activity. People aren't parking and commuting to work as much. And that has been talked about before, that it is being monitored, and there is a report that will be coming back to the village board in the future just on where we're at with that. But we are showing that those revenues continue to be down, and we'll see how that plays out going into the fall as people may start returning to work. All other revenues are performing as expected.
And are we seeing any unusual revenue items or timing items, unusual remittances, grants, anything in the revenue line that's causing the very large positive variance, or this is all really sort of normal operating revenue line year to date?
These are all related to normal operations.
Revenue sources, okay,
Yes.
thank you.
And this is more of a list view of the revenue.
Oh, Andrea,
Yes.
how did the forecasts, because I know we lowered our budgeted numbers because we thought that the sales tax and income tax revenues weren't going to be as great. In terms of what we're now forecasting, how does that compare, say, to 2019?
We are not back up to pre-COVID levels, but if the trend continues, we will reach pre-COVID levels again, I would say by 2022. This slide puts the full revenue, general fund operating revenue in categories. So you can see by category where we're at with the $20 million budget compared to the $21 million forecast. The main revenue for the village is property tax, which is very stable. So that's why you're seeing that that is coming in as we expect on target. Sales tax is the next line, and you can see that is up quite a bit from the budgeted amount of 2.6 to the forecast amount of 3.5. The state income tax, again, that's also up. That is tied to the state's fiscal year 2022 budget, where they did restore some LGDF revenue, which was good news for the village because there had been talk about diverting additional funds away from local governments back to the state. Food and beverage tax is trending slightly over. We haven't seen that fully recover, but I'm optimistic that through the summer months, we will see that recover, possibly even more than what these forecasts are showing. Let's see. The other state, federal, and local tax distributions include use tax and other various taxes. That's also coming in slightly ahead of budget. Utility taxes include gas, electric, water, and telecom tax. And while gas and electric are trending over budget, telecom continues to trend downward pretty significantly. So any gain that we're seeing from gas and electric has been offset by the decrease in the telecom tax.
Can you just expand on that for a minute, Andrea? Telecom tax is down by what percent year over year on a 6-month year-to-date basis?
I don't have the detail in front of me, but I'd be happy to look that up and follow up.
Is telecom focused on landlines, or is it across the board, cellular and landlines?
The focus is on landlines, and as more and more people eliminate landlines, that's why that revenue line is dropping.
And do we get any pickup from cellular as it relates to revenues?
I'm sorry, I
Do
didn't
we
hear.
do we acquire any revenue as a result of cellular that, or is that not part of those line items?
That isn't offsetting the decrease from the landline decrease.
So, but we do get some revenue from
I'm sorry,
cellular.
yes, we do receive tax revenue from cell phones, but not to the extent that it's offsetting the decrease to the landlines.
And
I'm
is it
sorry.
legislated that way, or is it simply
Yes.
that we don't charge it?
Sorry, Andrew, just one more. Is it possible to circulate to the commission and the trustees the 6-month year-to-date treasurer's report we used to see, where we could get at the underlying
Yes.
account categories? Now that we're in our second year of the ERP system, do we have comparable year-over-year numbers on a new fiscal year equals calendar year basis?
Yes, that is on our to-do list.
Okay.
So this meeting, we wanted this to occur.
Yes.
And the water rate discussion, and then we're going to work in getting that back into place using
great.
the ERP system.
Okay, thank you.
Ambulance fees are down again this year. There were fewer transports during COVID. A lot of people just did not want to go to the hospital, and those numbers continue to be lower this year, which I verified with the fire department just to make sure that our revenues are trending along with their actual call volume, which is down. There is a related cost to that because of our outsource of the ambulance billing, so the expense is down slightly as well, and we'll see how that trend continues through the rest of the year. And let's see, cable franchise fees are slightly up again as well, by about $20,000 based on what the current forecast shows. Again, that shows that we are trending over budget by around $863,000, which is 4.2% above what the budget target was. The next slide has an overview of expenditures by department. And we're showing that the total expenditures forecast at $20.2 million are slightly under budget from the budget figure of $20.3 million, which is about 0.77% under budget. The lines that are trending to be a little bit over administration and finance has to do mainly with payments that are associated with staff that has retired and the payments that go out to those staff for paying out unused vacation, sick time, et cetera. So when long-term employees leave, there are sometimes large payouts. And that is what it's attributed to the administration and finance line forecast being above budget. Thank you. Kathleen reminded me that as well, we had contract accountants in-house for the first 6 months of the year, Lauterbach and Amen, to backfill for the transition in the finance director position. And that amount is calculated into there as well. A significant portion of the general fund expenses come from wages. The wage detail in front of you is incorporated of the full-time wages, part-time wages, and then associated longevity pay that goes and other minor items that go with it. It does not include overtime. But the regular wages, we're showing that we're trending less than 1% over budget. And again, that is attributed to those payouts that have occurred this year from long-term employees that have retired. Generally, everyone is trending on or below budget, and if it weren't for two significant payouts, we would be trending under budget and wages as well.
Does this include benefits and pension?
I'm sorry, this only has the actual wage figures,
The base
just
wages,
the salaries.
sailor
Yes.
salaries.
Again, this is just a summary, high level, to show that the top section with the 2021 budget, revenue was 20.394 million, expenditures 20.383, with a budgeted net income of $10,000. And the forecast has the revenue at 21.2 million, expenditures at 20.2 million, and a net income of just over $1 million. This is obviously subject to change as we proceed through the year, but based on what we're seeing so far this year, everything looks optimistic in terms of revenue. And then a summary of the unassigned fund balance. In 2020, we assumed we would end the year with an unassigned fund balance of 5.7 million. We actually ended at 5.9 million, so we were ahead of our target by $226,000. In 2021, the original budgeted unassigned fund balance was 5.7 million. We're now looking at something closer to 6.9 million, which will be 1.2 million ahead of what the forecast was when the budget was put together. Any questions on the general fund operating items before I move into the capital improvement plan?
Just a comment, I mean, one of the things we did with the 2021 budget is we reduced some of the contributions to the funds. So something to think about, and we'll decide later, but one possible thing we could do is increase those contributions back to what they historically have been.
Yeah, that's a great point. There was, normally there is a $1.2 million contribution from the general fund to the master infrastructure plan. And in both 2020 and 2021, that was reduced by 50% to ensure that we were meeting revenue targets. So as we get to the end of 2021, assuming we're still trending on target, a decision can be made as to what to do with the fund balance that's in excess of that 25% target. And that absolutely can be diverted to future infrastructure or capital projects. So yeah, great point, thank you. The capital improvement projects are they're part of the general fund, but they're in a sub-fund. So we categorize the funding and the expenditures separately to make sure that we can monitor where we're at with those funds. The sub-fund had a beginning fund balance of $2.5 million this year. There is a budgeted contribution of $625,000 from the general fund operating fund into the capital improvement fund. There are grants totaling $839,000 that we're expecting in 2021. And there are loan proceeds related to the HTPA project that is going on right now. With capital expenditures budgeted at $2.9 million, the ending fund balance will be around $1.4 million. Last month, portions of this presentation were given to Village Board while we were looking for the consent of the board to move forward with capital projects. So we are moving forward with capital projects, but possibly a little bit later than we may have in a non-COVID situation. So it is likely that all projects won't be completed this year, and the actual ending fund balance will be dependent on, it will be a timing issue, but it'll be dependent on how many projects we actually get done this year. What doesn't get done this year, I would assume would be completed in 2022. The capital improvement plan was put together by categorizing projects into 3 categories, the first being critical. So a list of those projects is included. There were 12 projects classified as critical. There has been about 13% spent on those. The ERP system and ongoing implementation and related consulting work was identified as critical. There were also some pool improvements that are ongoing, replacement vehicle. The police and fire building boiler replacement has been completed, and the platform tennis hut is in progress and it's on target to be completed this fall as expected.
Do you anticipate the amount spent by the end of the year will hit the budget? Is it just a kind of a timing issue that we're only halfway through the year, or will we come in a lot less?
I think that it will probably be close to the budget when all projects are completed, but probably not this year.
Okay.
Just to clarify, or for everybody, the platform tennis hut construction is the HPTA partnership hut, is that right? Or is that the Burns Park one? I'm sorry, I forgot.
That's the
which one is this
partnership
year.
hut,
It is
yes.
the partnership. And are we still seeing the fund flows from that in terms of the HPTA's contribution meeting expectations?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
There were 11 projects categorized as recommended, and again, we did get consent from the village board last month to move forward with those. It's only been a month, so not a lot of progress has been made on those, but we are moving forward with the projects as planned. And then the last category are contingent projects, 4 projects totaling $344,000. I believe that some progress has been made on the gateway entry marker signs and the wayfinding signs, and the other projects, again, will move forward as time permits. With that, just wanted to give a brief update on COVID-19 funding. The first funding that came through was through FEMA. The funding period for FEMA is January 2020, and it extends currently through this September 30th of 2021. So we are still able to capture and submit funding to FEMA. Our actual application is still being reviewed and pending. There's a bit of a backlog, so we don't have any dollars in from FEMA yet. But we do expect to have at least $50,000, if not more, coming in, and we do have one other submission that we'll make this fall after that funding period ends. The CARES funding came through Cook and DuPage counties. That funding has all fully been received. It was captured in terms of offsetting public safety wages for the work that they did directly related to COVID-19. And the last is the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. There's been a lot of news on that. The preliminary estimates show that the village would be eligible to receive just over $2 million, with the first 50% allotment of $1 million coming potentially this year, and the next allotment of $1 million a year after. We are still waiting for the state to, we are a non-entitlement unit because our population is under $50,000. So we are dependent on the state requesting the funding and then passing that funding through to the local governments.
And at this time, the state of Illinois is among 11 states that have not yet requested the federal funding. And this will be important to keep in mind during our budget process because the state, though it hasn't requested the funding, has set up the mechanism for us to access the funding when it happens. We'll have to go through one state agency and then have it remitted through another state agency to receive our funding. So this is something that the Illinois Municipal League, I shared some communication with, you all may have received it, but also with Trustee Postma, that the Illinois Municipal League just yesterday made a request of the governor to request those funds.
Wasn't that 2.4 million we said at the last meeting?
Correct, and as Andrea said, it's split into two tranches, if you will. So we get 50% this year, then 50% next year, but the
Oh, she
total-
said just a little over 2 million. I was thinking two. Certain numbers I remember real well.
Okay.
Sorry, that was an overgeneralization. Yeah, $400,000 isn't anything to sneeze at, though.
How much was received for the CARES? CARES Act?
The CARES Act funding. 827,000.
I know,
Thanks.
And that's all in-house at this point.
Yes.
And so where did we book that on our financial statements as it came in?
It's a federal grant.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Oh, 2020, yeah. That was part in 2020, so it's included
Okay.
in the audit report that
Okay.
will be covered later tonight.
Okay, thank you.
And then just touching on, again, on the ARPA funds, that's something that we have talked about how the funds might be spent, but based on the status, we're not, we're not including any of that in the forecast or in any of the projections, I would say, until we have a more positive outlook from the state as to the timing of when that will come in.
So just to draw you out, so the forecast that you just provided earlier in your presentation does not include any of the 1.2 million or so that we would expect in fiscal '21. And that's because the state hasn't submitted the request to the federal government yet. Is that fair?
That is correct.
Okay.
All the numbers that you're seeing exclude anything that we may receive from, or that we expect to receive from this, via the state in terms of ARPA funding.
Is there any indication that the governor is going to actually do this request?
Yes, I can't imagine that they wouldn't. I guess stranger things have happened. The entitlement units that have already made their requests already have their money. They received their money weeks and months ago. So we were actually expecting originally we expected the money in possibly by the end of June. So this was definitely an unexpected curveball, that this money's literally sitting with the Treasury just waiting for people to say, yeah, you can send us our money now.
Has the Illinois Municipal League, on behalf of the municipalities, reviewed the ARPA statute in detail to the point that they've offered the Illinois Municipal League membership an opinion on the extent to which the state could make the request of the federal government but decline to distribute funds to the municipalities? Is there any risk of that if the state would make the request?
I don't think there is the option for them to request the funds and not distribute to the municipalities. The issue is going to be what process they make the municipalities go through to get the funding, and if the municipality is equipped to go through that process. We are already compliant with what we understand the regulations are. We already have our government accountability and transparency, our GATA portal up to date. We already have our SAMS I'm sorry, I'm using acronyms, but GATA and SAMs and DUNS and all of these things that they've indicated that we have to have in place to receive the funds. There may be some other very small municipalities that haven't had a need for that and would struggle to complete those.
And if not all the municipalities use the money, then it stays with the state.
Yes.
So we are definitely monitoring the situation closely to ensure we fully understand what the requirements will be for the non-entitlement units to request the funding, so that doesn't happen to the village.
And Kathleen, how much is the state of Illinois' total allocation of ARPA funds? Do you have that handy, or a ballpark estimate?
No, I don't want to.
I mean, are we talking about potentially hundreds of millions of dollars that the state might end up with if small municipalities don't meet all of the compliance requirements for their distributions?
I'd like to look into that.
Okay, fair enough.
Provide a number.
Yeah, okay. And would you mind?
Not at all.
Okay, thanks.
The DuPage mayors and managers met last week, and Brad Cole from the IML happened to be at our meeting. And there is a group of managers that are working together to determine the best way to figure out how we're going to be able to access these funds. I volunteered to participate in that group.
Great.
With that, I'll move on to the Water and Sewer Operating Fund. So revenue in the Water and Sewer Fund is trending under budget. This is attributed to the budget assuming that we would have a rate adjustment on or around January 1st, and we're still working through that. There is a proposal later tonight to adjust the rates with a September 1st effective date. So the forecast that you see tonight uses the assumption that the rates will be adjusted on September 1st. So water sale revenue is budgeted at 8.4 million, and the forecast is 7.37 million, so that's down slightly. Sewer fee revenue, which is 15%, charged at 15% of water, is targeting pretty close to budget. And while there's no specific budget for a fixed fee, if the proposed $15 infrastructure and maintenance fee is implemented for September 1st, that's estimated to generate around $185,000 in revenue for this fiscal year, and that would be around $530,000 annually. And that would be revenue that would be dedicated to maintain the infrastructure and for future water and sewer main projects.
$30 times 6,000 counts.
Okay. Well, $30 times 6,000?
Yeah. It's $15 per 2 months.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. And there's 6,000 accounts. That's right here.
The next slide has the revenue categorized. Again, you can see the budget for water sales is 8.4 million. The forecast is slightly under that. Sewer fees are trending on target. And with the proposed infrastructure fee, that would be an additional $185,000 of revenue this year.
Your sales on the previous page was 7.37 million, and this is 7.7 million?
Yeah,
It's a $400,000 difference. Do you know which one's right?
I apologize. I believe that may be a typo, that with the forecast being, it should have been 7.7, not
There's 4 months.
737.
Okay.
I'll verify that and
4
I can
months
send out a
starting in
correction.
September and the rest of the year. So $30.
Oh, $30 times 6.
Times
Okay, I
6,000.
got you. Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you for pointing that out. Okay, so again, revenue is trending under budget by around $561,000, which is 5.99%. The water revenue is highly variable based on consumption. So if actual consumption for the remaining 6 months of the year is significantly off of what our estimates are, that could change. Particularly in the summer months, it can be highly variable depending on how much rain comes in and how much watering of and irrigation for lawns is done. But we'll continue to monitor that and report on it monthly.
What are the peak months for water usage? Is it June, July, August?
Yeah, and then possibly into September, depending on what the weather is like, but definitely June, July, and August. The water fund operating expenses are trending basically on target. With the forecast, it shows that they're coming in over budget by around $1,000, which is less than 8%.
That liability insurance is way off. I mean, we budgeted 80,000, it's only costing 7,500.
Yes, the IRMA premiums did come in, and I believe that has to do with how our claims activity is in any one year may result in credits that apply to a future year. So because of our past positive experience, we had credits that offset what our actual premium was. So
Yeah, normally our annual contribution was supposed to be $475,000, and we had $461,000 credit. So that's why this year's contribution is only 14, and that's allocated towards all the departments. So that's why it's that much lower. And when the budget was completed last fall, we were not aware of the credit.
But in a normalized year, that'd be higher.
yes, correct.
So if you look at our revenues down, these expenses would be higher from a normalized standpoint. We've just got a one-time event that's making us look a little bit better than we are.
And it, in addition to the revenues being lower, we are rated by our overall performance. So there is a credit that we do receive if our claims experience is more favorable than the rest of the members of the pool. And we, up until I think last year or the year before, had been trending pretty well in terms of workers' comp cases and things like that.
So again, overall, we're trending on target, and everything indicates that trend will continue through the end of the year. So in summary, for the water and sewer operating fund, the budget had an ending operating income of approximately $1.5 million. And because revenue is trending under slightly, we're looking at an ending operating income of $929,000.
And then what was operating capital? What are you forecasting operating capital spending for the water and sewer utility to be for this year relative to what was budgeted? Excuse me.
That's incorporated into the master infrastructure plan, which is the next section that I'll go through. So the total 2021 budget for the expenditure budget for the master infrastructure plan was $8.6 million. The original budget figures had an assumption of a beginning fund balance of $3.4 million and an ending fund balance of $1.3 million. With the forecast, the beginning fund balance was on target, and the ending fund balance is $2.03 million. The budgeted revenue was $6.4 million, and the forecast revenue is $6.5 million. So revenue is targeting slightly over budget. And some highlights of those figures include our non-home rule sales tax, which goes directly into the master infrastructure plan. That's separate then from the state's 1% sales tax, which goes into the general fund. Just like the regular sales tax, this is trending over budget, and over budget by around $100,000 based on current estimates, which includes some information from the IML on how that's trending. There are grant funds that are coming in. The previous projection last month assumed that the additional $340,000 in grant revenue related to Garfield Street would come in 2021. That's actually now expected to come in 2022, so that's just a timing issue and something that's changed from the last information that was presented. Our MFT allotments are trending over budget by around $35,000. And in addition, Cook County MFT revenue was not budgeted because it sunset, or that expired in December 31st of last year. But there was activity from December that the revenue didn't come in until this year. So that is an additional $135,000 of unbudgeted revenue. And then there are some other miscellaneous revenues that are trending slightly under budget to give us that total revenue forecast. The expenditures budgeted at $8.6 million. The forecast is now $7.9 million, which is down $696,000. We've seen many favorable bid results, which is attributing to the being under budget. So in summary, there was $1.34 million budgeted as an ending fund balance. We're trending ahead of budget, so we're looking at an ending fund balance of $2 million. That $2 million assumes that there will be an $800,000 transfer from the water operating fund into the water capital fund, and into the MIP fund. And with the revenue being down, one consideration for the later in the year might be to reduce or forego that transfer if needed, if it's needed in the water operating fund. Because there are adequate funds in the master infrastructure plan and in the water capital plan for the budgeted projects. If we didn't do the full $800,000 transfer, the forecast ending fund balance would be $1.2 million, which isn't significantly off from the $1.34 million that we thought we were ending, that we were projected to end when the budget was put together. And again, we'll wait to see how things progress over the next few months in the water operating fund, and then come back to let you know if, to see where the funds are best utilized. So I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I was getting into the water capital funds. There was a question on the water capital fund balance, and I'm not sure if I answered that. If not, I can follow up on it. The last item was just kind of a high level of what our meeting plans are. So we are planning to do quarterly financial updates in April, July, October, and January for full results of for each of those quarters that are ending, and then that would tentatively be a joint Finance Commission Committee of the Whole meeting. And the last page includes just a general outline of some of the standing items that come to the Board of Trustees for first readings, and where those generally will fall now that we're on a calendar year.
And I wanted to add one other thing, and it's unrelated to these summaries, just going back to the general fund. One of the things included in the forecast for the remainder of this year is to set departments back to pre-pandemic staffing levels. We've done that in the community development department, and we plan on doing that in the manager's office. We're in the process of, we have a finalist for the assistant to the village manager. That's a step below the Brad position. And additionally, with us today is Tracy McLaughlin. Tracy currently works for GovHR. That's a contract firm that we have used for our HR services. She likes it here so much that she is willing to join us part-time, in a part-time capacity, so we can leverage her over 20 years of experience in HR. And because of other moves that we've made with different positions that really wouldn't impact the board in terms of changing our how we staff our payroll function, and so someone has a higher level of skill than before. We think that we can, using Tracy's skills and this other individual's skills, we will be able to meet the needs of the organization in terms of HR. In fact, probably better than how we were doing it before. So I just wanted you all to be aware of that, and that's included in the numbers presented.
Okay. So it was a little early to have a full treasurer's report completed through June for tonight's meeting, particularly with the holiday weekend. So we will follow up with the treasurer's report as you requested through the end of June. And then I have talked with Trustee Postuma about creating that monthly report going forward. And then with a quarterly recap meeting with the full Finance Commission. And then, of course, if we need additional meetings for capital planning, budget revenue setting, those will be in far more detail than what we're seeing today. That covered everything that I wanted to go through tonight. I was trying to get everything done in 45 minutes, so everyone had a minute to breathe before the next meeting, but I'm happy to take any other questions and encourage anyone to give me feedback on information as it's presented so I can take that into consideration for future presentations.
Anything else, Adam? No? Anyone else?
Thank you.
No, great job.
Good.
Thanks, Andrea.
Okay,
Thank you, Andrea.
Welcome to the village.
thanks. Happy to be here.
So,
Are we on break?
shall we adjourn?
Move to adjourn. Aye.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned.
Not that I-
We don't get to vote.
You used to get to vote, yeah, old habit.